What's up, guys? Sarah Cooper, good morning. Nice to see you. Justine from France, good evening over there. And Augustus Link, early to the show, popping up with some good questions and some Augustus Link style questions. But we're going to cover all three of the semifinals. That will be wrapping up the third week of the semifinal stretch this year. So that'll be North America East, which we'll spend most of our time on, Africa, and South America. We will get to Copa Sur, which is the South Cup, literally translated, Augustus Link, when Sergio joins us. Sergio is, the guys in Brazil will basically say he's like the Brian Friend of Brazil, that he knows more about the athletes down there than just about anyone. He'll be involved with the competition, and he's going to be joining us in a little bit, maybe very shortly. So as soon as he comes on, we'll definitely switch the focus to South America, and we'll spend the time that we have with him to give you guys some insights into some athletes there. There are some athletes on there that I know quite a lot, and some others that did quite well in the qualifier that I don't know very much about at all. So hopefully Sergio can help us out in that regard. Like I said, we'll get a little bit of a touch on Africa, but they only get one spot, and the North America East semifinals are this is serious. Brian, are you commentating this weekend? I wish. Oh man, that would be so fun to do, but unfortunately I am not. It's going to be Sean Woodland and Adrian Conway. Summit Games are happening in the fall. I know a lot about them, and I think it's going to be a great competition. Adrian Conway's programming, I've already seen the programming. They're moving to Salt Lake City. We're going to have a full broadcast, and I'm going to be involved with that. It should be a good time. Good morning, T-Bird, and right on cue, Sergio Sanchez. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Hey, Sergio.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Sergio, I was already hyping you up to the audience here that you're one of the most, if not the most knowledgeable guy about CrossFit in South America, specifically probably in Brazil, and that you'll be involved with Copa Sur once again this year. What role will you have down there?
Yeah, I'll do the broadcast for teams during Copa Sur, and me and Gustavo Lemos, which is a coach and also an elite athlete here in Brazil. But I'll be in the arena covering all the events beyond broadcast for also the individuals, right?
Excellent. So we're gonna take an opportunity. We're probably going to focus more on the individual side of things. I was kind of prefacing this that there are some athletes in the individual field that I know quite a bit about personally, and there's a few others that I don't know that much about. Maybe you'll be able to help us out there. Sure. But on the big picture, South America has gotten an extra qualifying spot this year. So I'm sure that you guys down there are pretty excited about that.
Yes, we are. I wasn't quite sure until the final announcement, right? But we are all very excited. Last year had 2 spots, now have 3 for both men and women. I was hopeful for that because since the 2 men that went individual last year did not qualify. No, the year before that, in 2022, did not qualify last year. I was hopeful that it would get more athletes in the top 100. And when some of the women dropped out of the competition, then I said, well, maybe that's the time we get a 3rd spot. And we are all very excited about that. I know Guy, for instance, he got that bittersweet taste for finishing 3rd last year. So this won't happen again this year, I believe.
And so just to put it in context for people, 2 years ago, Guy Meeros and Agustin Riquelme were the 2 male representatives from South America. Last year, Kalian Souza and Kaique Cerveni took those 2 spots. And so in the last 2 years, we've had 4 different men, 3 Brazilians, and 1 from Argentina that were representing South America at the CrossFit Games. 3 of them end up finishing in the bottom 10 of the field there. Obviously, Guy has had two top 10 finishes during his run at the games. But I think that it just is a good example of the competition towards the top of the men's field down there.
Yeah, and I think it's actually getting better and better this year. We have, I know some names are going to do a lot of work there also. Beyond Kalian, Kaique, Guy, and he called me, right?
Yeah. So for you, who are a couple of the other guys that you think could be in the mix alongside those four names that we know?
Yeah, João Pedro Barcelos, which is, I think he's the second place. He has the same coach and he trains with Kaique and Kalian. So he's been growing a lot as an athlete. Their coach, which is Bernardo, he has a program called BSB Strong, was the coach that put Guy in the elite for the first time in 2019. And then he was his coach until, I think, 2021 when he moved to Mayhem. Right, so he's famous for putting people there. He also trains Andrea Pinheiro, which was second place last year at the CrossFit Games in the 40-44 division, and third place last year at Copa Sur. And so he has a nice touch to put people in the CrossFit Games. So João Pedro Barcelos is actually is a name to watch.
And this guy, just so the listeners know, he qualified second out of the quarterfinals. He's got almost the prototypical physique for a CrossFitter. He's probably 5'9", 5'10", 190, 95 pounds, and he's only 23 years old. Do you actually think that he has a chance to take a podium spot this year?
I don't know if you have a chance to take a podium spot this year, but it's certainly a name to look. Not only him, but also Bruno Marins. He actually finished 5th last year, and he moved to Saudi Arabia to train with Kalia Souza. They're very good friends, and he's always on the verge of going of getting to the podium, but not quite there yet. But it's also a name to look. And Bruno, but I think the name that can actually get in the games. And, yes.
No, I just wanted to help people when they're thinking about these guys. Bruno, just like Kalian and Keike, he's a pretty big dude. And we've seen through the first 2 weeks of the semifinals that it seems to be tending a little bit towards the bigger guys. Looks like we lost Sergio for a second there. Oh. See if he comes back.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had a problem with my connection. You were saying about Bruno?
I was just saying that he's on the bigger side in terms of athletes as well, similar to Kalian and Kaique.
Yes.
And we've seen already through 2 weeks that some of the bigger guys have been doing pretty well in the semifinals.
Yeah, and these three athletes, they have always the same, this kind of athletes have always the same problem, which is the handstand push-ups and the strict handstand push-ups. It's their weakness for all the three of them. And they have no strict handstand push-ups for the individuals this year. So they have a nice shot. But there is one athlete that he got a penalty, so he's not on the top part of the leaderboard after the quarterfinals. But he's always consistent and always gives. I mean, in the national, which is considered our national CrossFit Championship, and all the major competitions in Brazil, he has a great performance. That is Henrique Moreira. And I believe he has a very good shot of actually going to the games. He went to the games last year as in the team with Templo SA. And I think he has a very, very nice shot of getting in this year as an individual.
Now, he's only 21 years old, and that was not the name that I was expecting you to say. I'm going to put his name in the chat there. Enrique is probably how most people from North America will read it, Moreira. And he got a penalty on the first workout just like everybody else. So he came in 29th in the qualifier. But you think this kid has the potential?
Yeah, I mean, he came back to Brazil, and a month later he competed in what is considered in TCB, which is considered like our national championship, and he got second place a month after the CrossFit Games. And I went to another great competition in Brazil, that is the Monster Games, with a lot of elite athletes, a lot of athletes that are competing in Copa Sur, and he won that event, that championship. So he is very, very good, and he's very young. He actually qualified for the games as a team some years ago, but his visa was denied, so he couldn't go. And last year he almost didn't go because his visa was denied again, but then he could get a visa later on, and now he has a 10-year valid visa. So I think there will be no problem. And I spoke with him a couple of weeks ago, and he's very confident. He's very, very prepared for this competition. He changed codes. He's now living in another state. He used to live in Brazil. Now he moved to Minas Gerais. And he's training a lot, and I think he has a very, very good chance. And I have to say, I mean, we joke about him, but have you ever heard of Anderon Primo?
Yes, he's the guy I thought you were going to say.
Yeah. Here, Anderon Primo was the last name I'm going to say. He's like an underdog this year because he got injured at the Palooza Latam. So he did not perform well during Open and quarterfinals. And he didn't even qualify for semifinals before all the penalties were assessed. So, but I was with him this weekend, and he said he's 100%. I asked, is that what all athletes say, or are you really 100%? Said no. If you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would say I was not feeling good for this competition. Now I think I'm 100%. I'm going to give my best. But he always, I mean, we joke that he's not a 2-day competition guy. He's a 4-day competition guy. So he won the TCB championship 6 times already.
Yep.
But he's not that lucky with 2-day competition, but he's one of the crowd favorites here in Brazil.
Well, it might bode well for him that the last day has half of the workouts. So by day 3, maybe he's feeling a little bit better than some of those guys and can make a charge up the leaderboard. There is one other young guy. He's not Brazilian. He is a former CrossFit teenage champion that I thought you might bring up, which is fittest guy in Chile, Benjamin Gutierrez. What do you think about him?
I think he has a very nice shot. I don't know. I mean, it's hard because some of these guys, they have a great pass as a team. And then when they made the transition as elite athletes, and it's kind of harder to see how would they go. But I think he has a very good chance. I don't know if this year will be his year, but maybe next year or in 2025, 2026, I think he's going to give a lot of hard time. And Riquelme, of course. Riquelme, I didn't mention Riquelme, but I mean, he was not good last year. He had an injury last year. So I think he'll come back stronger, much, much stronger this year. But he has a nice chance. Benjamin Gutierrez is an excellent athlete, and I think he'll perform very well. I don't know if this year he'll get the spot, but we'll see.
Okay, so if we're looking at the men's side and you had to pick 3, who are the 3 guys that you think have the best chance to make it this weekend?
Malheiros, I mean, for sure. I'm still afraid of how he'll do in the first workout because he's not very good at longer workouts, but I think he'll get a spot. Kalia and Henrique Moreira.
Okay, so you think that Moreira is the kind of upset pick there. Calian Souza, who I personally think is the guy to beat in Brazil right now, and Guimarães makes a return to the CrossFit Games.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to say why I don't think Kaique will get the spot. And I'm going to have a lot of haters in Brazil for saying that. But it's an inside information. But he's dating one of the most famous Brazilian artists. She won the Big Brother a couple of years ago and left Big Brother with like 40 million followers on Instagram. She started an amazing career as a singer, and he's been following her. He's very focused. He's hardworking, but I mean, since he's been following her everywhere, this could potentially damage his preparation for the games. But I mean, Kaique and Riquelme would be my other 2 names to get this spot also.
So those are his top 5 guys in some order. He likes Calian Souza, Guimarães, and Henrique Moreira, a bit of an unknown young up-and-comer, with Kaique Cerveni and Agustin Riquelme being in the mix. So for the most part, the top guys are still the top guys, with one kind of wild card thrown out there. I love it, of Henrique Moreira. Let's flip over to the women's side. And for me, in South America right now, there's Victoria Campos and there's everybody else. Would you agree with that?
For sure. I agree. I totally agree with that. I mean, she won 2 years in a row. She's an amazing athlete, and I don't think she can be beat this year by any other athletes that are. She's amazing. I mean, it's actually Vic versus everybody else.
Yeah, and so Victoria Campos is a good bet to take one of the 3 spots. If you're just looking at the qualifiers coming in, I have to ask you about this girl, Gabriela Luque, because I've never heard of her. She has almost no resume in CrossFit Games, but she qualified 3rd. What do you know about her?
Well, let me just say that I didn't know about her until September last year, because she qualified to TCB, and she almost won. She was a newcomer, and she almost won the championship, the Brazilian championship.
Wow.
She just did not win because she could not do a pirouette, and then she ended up in 3rd place because she had a very bad time in gymnastics. She's good at handstand walking, but not in doing pirouettes, and that really damaged her last year. But I was very surprised. I mean, I do the broadcast for TCB, and I was very surprised. And I had to during that event, I had to learn much more about Gabriela Luque. And what amazes me the most that she was a newcomer. It was her first time in the finals in TCB, and she did not care. I mean, she was not intimidated by all the athletes, and she just was taking it all the way up to the final event. So she's an amazing athlete. I'm surprised to see how she'll do in Copa Sur, and I'm hoping she'll do fine. I mean, she's an athlete actually for us to have a good eye on for the next 2 years. I don't know if this will be her year also, but she's definitely someone we should look up to. Look up to no, look after. I don't know how to say that in the.
We'll keep an eye on her. She could be a name that's relatively unknown, especially outside of Brazil, that might surprise some people this weekend. I'm going to throw
until last year she was an unknown name in Brazil.
Okay. So she's new to competitive CrossFit, and she's doing very well so far. I'm going to throw three other Brazilian names at you real quick and get your take on these. So Emily Andrade, she qualified 2nd. Julia Cato, who everybody will know from the games a couple years ago, and Luisa Marquez, who is still pretty young but is quite talented. I got a chance to train with her in Mayhem.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Are you there?
I don't know.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello? Okay.
You got me?
Sorry. You said Emily Andrade, Julia Cato, and Luisa Marquez, right?
Yes. Of those 3, what do you know about them? Who do you like the best this weekend?
Well, for this weekend, I think I'm gonna say Emily Andrade. Emily Andrade, she already won TCB, and she was 2nd last year. She's a great athlete. She's very proficient in gymnastics. She used to be a gymnast, and she won another very important championship this year. That is a Monster Game here in Brazil. She did some good job there in Wodapalooza Latam, and I think she's gonna do great at Copa Sur. So she was 5th last year. I think the major problem for her will be the snatch competition, the snatch workout. Sorry, she's not very strong with heavy barbells, but I don't think it's going to be a major problem for her. Julia Cato was injured last year. She had a problem with her thighs. This is why she did very well last year. So I'm hoping she's better this year. And I think it's another great name for us to look, to keep an eye on. And I mean, Luisa Marquez, she already qualified 3 times as a team. She's an amazing athlete, but because she lives very far from here. She also lives in Olain. So it's hard to follow how she's doing during the year, both her and Julia Cato. But I'm going to say another name there also, if you don't mind. That is Andrea Pinheiro.
Oh yes, she was the next one I was going to ask about, because you've mentioned a few athletes that are, proficient with the gymnastics. There is a little bit of gymnastics in this competition, but the handstand walking is pretty straightforward, and it's mostly the upper body pulling with the rope climbs and the muscle ups. Pinheiro took a little penalty. on workout number 2, but she's sitting there 14th. She was one spot out, I think, last year from making it. You think she has a chance this year?
Actually, yeah. If we had 3 spots last year, she would have qualified for the elite, right? And I think she has a chance this year with 3 spots. I really do. And it's amazing because she's a master athlete. She has more than 40 years old. I think she's 41 or 42 now.
She will be
And
41 years old by the time of the games come. Yes.
yeah, 41. So she is very strong, and she has a mentality that is amazing. She trains with Kaique, she trains with Anderon, she trains with all these guys, and it's actually kind of scary what she can do at this age compared to other elite athletes in South America. So I think she has a very nice chance of getting this one spot to the games. And I think I forgot to look at, but I think she qualified this year also for the Masters. They just finalized the
Masters. The
Masters,
age groups
right?
were finalized yesterday, and she was first place in her age group in the qualifiers. She was first place last year in the qualifiers and second place for the 40 to 44 at the games last year. So she's doing very well in the Masters division, but does seem like she has a chance this year. Sergio, you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, but a lot of the people here in the chat think that she looks unnaturally strong. You know, when you, just for people to know, when you just barely miss out on the CrossFit Games, you still have to take a drug test. So I'm assuming that she did get drug tested last year and she passed that test.
She got a drug tested last year at Copa Sur, and she got drug tested last year also at the CrossFit Games, and she passed both tests. She actually made a joke at her Instagram page because Hiller made a video saying that he would cut off his penis if she passed the drug test. So she went there and said, "Are you going to cut off?" Because I passed my drug test.
Okay, well, if he wants
But
to get a lot of...
she's been an athlete her entire life. She was an athlete, a bodybuilding athlete. She's a nutrition coach, I think. That's how I say it. And she is amazing. She takes very good care of herself. So it's hard, but it's hard to look at that at 40 years old. Said that's not natural, but she passed all the drug tests. So
No,
I can honestly say that so far you can argue about that, but she's proven that she's clean.
right. And, you know, that's the stance that I usually take with these things. You know, obviously the drug testing is not a perfect thing, but if you go into competitions and you pass the drug tests, I don't really look any further at it than that. And if Andrew wants to get a lot of views, he can certainly follow up on his threat there. But outside of the Brazilian athletes, because all of the ones we've talked about are from Brazil, on the women's side, do you see any athletes from there that have a chance? Or do you think this is just Brazil all the way?
Well, I think I'm glad. I can say I'm glad to say it's going to be Brazil all the way in the women's side. The better athletes that would compete against these athletes outside Brazil are in the team category, right? So we have Melina Rodrigues there, and I think she was injured last year, but she's had an amazing year this year. So I think she would have a great possibility to qualify as an individual this year. But their team is so good that is at the team competition is going to be their team against everybody else, the team from Argentina against everybody else, and I don't see how our women can surprise us and take actually a spot. But at the same time, even though I'm gonna have some haters in Brazil arguing against that, I hope we do have some athlete from other countries that actually surprises us, because it makes us move forward and be stronger in the entire continent. So I hope that this could happen. Do you have any name in specific?
I mean, I've seen Laura Gonzalez Marin out of Venezuela compete before, but I agree with you that I don't think there's anyone. You know, the highest qualifier was Lucila Caro. She's only 21 years old from Uruguay. I don't know much about her. But I agree with you. I think the women in Brazil against this field, the people participating, because, Sasha Nieves and Melina Rodriguez, like you said, they're on the team division this year. So I would agree with
already
you.
qualified, right?
She did. She's on a team that has a Mexican flag there. I know it's a hybrid team of different countries that qualified in the West Coast. All right. So last question here. Besides Victoria Campos, who are your other two picks for the women this week to go to the CrossFit Games?
I think Andrea Pinheiro.
Okay.
Oh, this is me and my husband. Andrea Pinheiro is going to be this year for her, and I think Emily Andrade. I'm going to put in Emily Andrade, but I'm going to looking also at Luisa Marquez and maybe Amanda Fuzuma. Amanda Fuzuma was also in the top 5 before she got a penalty. She's an amazing athlete, a bit smaller, but she's very strong. And so I think Vic Campos, Emily Andrade, and Andrea Pinheiro, and maybe Julia. I forgot Julia Cato. If she's well, she's fully recovered. Julia Cato is always a name that we have to keep an eye on.
I'm glad that you brought up Fusuma. I actually think she has a chance for a top 5 finish. She was 41st after her penalty. There was one decline. I've noticed a pattern in South America. There's very, very, very few athletes that ever decline their invitation to semifinals. They almost all show up. This year, there was one decline on the women's side, so she got the backfill. And I think that for a backfill invite, she can do extremely well. And Luisa Marquez is a sneaky pick for me to potentially win the snatch ladder. So I'm just going to throw that out there. She's very good at the snatch.
That is true. That is true. And wow. Just a curiosity, Anderon Primo, that I did not mention in the male side, he was in all these individuals there. He was the only one that was actually in the regionals in 2016. And he did not finish the snatch ladder because his PR was 265. And now it's 305.
Yeah, we've seen some great performances, people in making a big improvement 8 years later, as we would expect to, and I'm sure that Anderon will do the same thing. Sergio, that was excellent. In about 20 minutes, I think we did a great job of giving people some insight into the top athletes and the battles that we can see down in South America. I know the competition down there is always electric. The fans are great. I hope you have an incredible weekend. Thank you for taking the time and sharing all your insights with us about the best athletes in South America.
Thank you. You're going to be at the North America East, right?
We are, and we're going to shift our attention to there in just a minute.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to follow, but thank you very much for inviting me, and have a great weekend also.
Yeah, have fun. Have fun. We'll be watching.
Thank you. See you. Sergio Sanchez, thank you for taking the time. Obviously, he's doing the prep work down there. He knows those athletes extremely well. Patrick, do you have that thing queued up that Halpin posted yesterday about Allison Scuds?
I do. 1 second.
Since Sergio brought up the improvement that he's expecting Primo to see in the snatch ladder, this was a pretty cool thing that Halpin dug up. I think either Allison herself or maybe Raf had sent it to her, but she's one of, I believe, 3 total athletes that did the snatch ladder in 2016, also did it at the 2021 West Coast Classic, and will do it this year during semifinals. The other 2 are coming up this weekend. I think it's Will Morton and Jake Berman. But what was cool is she improved all 3 times, but her relative placement to the field got worse all 3 times. So she went from not finishing it to finishing it faster, but to see her trajectory going up, but then relative to the field going down. And I thought it was one of the better examples that we've seen in terms of what he references, like the CrossFit saying of observable, measurable, repeatable, and that we actually have these data points from one athlete against 3 different fields over an 8-year time period where she's improving, but the field is passing her by anyway. And, obviously, in the context of the greatest of all time, when we have these conversations, that comes up is that, well, they're competing against a better field. The counter to it is you can't do anything about the field you're competing against. But great find by Mike, and I thought it was super relevant. We're going to get to see Jake and Will, have the potential to do this weekend as well. Yeah, I have a little cold. Brian is my name, by the way, but yes. So apologize for that. Doing my best.
I did like this right here. The top times for those during those eras, Carl Saunders, then Chloe Wilson, which we were able to see live there at the West Coast. Well, we were able to see it in person. The broadcast wasn't because she came out of that. I think she was in lane 1, right? That year at West Coast.
I'll allow it, Jake. Yeah. Oh yeah, she was on an outside lane. That's right.
Yeah, and they didn't catch
right side of the floor. If you were looking at it, I think.
Yeah, but then Olivia, so far, we did have an athlete that got around 3 minutes. So your prediction
closer to 4 minutes, but
yeah.
that was crazy. And La Perf put up a post quantifying that in terms of the P score, with the dominance basically index of what she was able to do out there. But yeah, anyway, I thought that was kind of fun. I think most of you guys are probably here for the North America East, and that's where we're going to shift our attention to next. We will talk about Africa at the end of the show, but the North America East field is, in my opinion, the strongest field, top to bottom, men, women, and teams that the semifinals has ever seen. And in particular, the men's field over here is, I mean, it is insane. So just to kind of put in context before we get into any specifics,
well, before we shift over, I did these, so at least I could do is share them. Is like, these are your top 3 picks for South America.
Yes, I did make my picks too. There we go. Kaylee and KK and Guimaeros. I mean, I think Kayike still has a great potential. I think these workouts are good for him, and I don't think that necessarily traveling around with his girlfriend is going to prevent him from taking one of the spots. But as Sergio said, there are a lot of other guys that are coming for those spots. So if you're not completely dialed in down there, it's not a given that we see these 3 guys at the games.
Which makes sense because, I mean, we weren't expecting these, Kaylee and Kiki to kind of, do what they did last year. I mean, and so what's to say that it doesn't happen again this year, especially with some of the names that Sergio brought up. So that's some great insight from him, especially since he knows that Brazil CrossFit scene so much. And yeah, and on the women's side, obviously we didn't really talk about her much, but Amanda Fusamo.
Oh yeah, I just did want to say about the men in South America. I actually think that Augustine Riquelme is one of the 3 fittest guys in South America.
Yes.
I just think that similarly to Colton Mertens, similarly to Ulda Supanex, Jona Koski, Luka Vuniak, I just don't think that these workouts are going to be favorable for him compared, considering his skill sets, what he's great at, and what these guys are great at. There's four machine workouts. There's the lack of the high skill gymnastics, I think, is clearly through 2 weeks tending towards a specific style of athlete. And so while I think Riquelme could beat these guys in many competitions, or at least be in the mix with them, I think he's going to be 4, 5, or 6 just on the outside because of the 6 workouts that they have this weekend. Fusuma honestly might be the same situation. These are rankings that I made prior to the semifinals starting, and I would actually probably tend to, I think in Heat 1 app, I actually have her 5th now, and I've bumped up Andrade to 2nd and put Pinheiro in 3rd. So I think we actually have the same 3 at this point on the women's side. But she is an athlete that I believe has the potential to again flirt with one of those top 3 game spots, despite being 41st in the qualifiers due to a penalty.
Yeah. And then to round out your top 3, the athletes you think are going to qualify out of South America is Emily Andrade. So, yeah. So right now, I mean, based on your picks, you're predicting a whole Brazilian sweep on both podiums on the individual side.
I did see this question come up earlier. What happened with your picks last week? I think I did not get Chris Ibarra. I think I got the other 8 guys, and I think I had Colton in. So I think I was 8 of 9 on the women's side, on the men's side. And then in Oceania, I had 3 of the 4. I had Ellis, and I think I had Ellis 6th. I had Zach Thomas 4th. I had Luke DeJong 5th. So I had 4 of the top 5. And then the guy I had 6th ended up taking 4th. So that's on the men. On the women's side, I think I got 3 of the 4 for the Australia. I did not have Daisy McDonald. I don't know anybody who did. I did have Georgia Pryor. And then I had Caitlin Van Ziel, who didn't have a great weekend. So I still had Sturt and Grace Walton. And then in the West, I think I had seven of the 9 in the West. I missed on Kerstetter, who's obviously close, and I think I missed on one other one. I did not have Hattie Canyo in the top 9. She was obviously, like Ibarra, extremely impressive. And I had Sydney Mikulishin, so I missed on Mikulishin, who was 12th, and on Kerstetter. And so pretty good overall last week. But in general, I'm usually about 80% on the picks, and so far this year it's been similar to that. Saw this comment from Augustus Link. I appreciate that. I really, when they invited me to do that, I really tried to prepare well. I was bummed I didn't get to do the last heat, but I think on the team side of things, that identifying the athletes by names can go a really long way. So I was trying to do that as best as I could, and it would have been even better in the final heat where I know most of the athletes. But I appreciate the comment. Do I pick Raquelme to win all events or Guy on heat 1? Guy's going to win the snatch ladder. Kalian Souza is probably going to win event 1. I think that it's going to be a really tight battle between Souza and Kaike in event 2. They had some similar workouts in Dubai, and they were like rep for rep with each other. And the final's pretty tough, but I would lean towards probably just one of those 3 guys again. If Raquelme is going to win a workout, it would have to probably be the row handstand walk. Again, there are a lot of workouts that you could design that he would beat these guys in. I just don't think these are the workouts. And Souza, again, is probably the pick for the legless, but it's going to be tight. There's, between those top 3 guys. I just think, yeah. And we'll get to this one, HGR CBD, in a minute.
All right. So moving on.
Christian Kettler, Daisy 5th. Very, very nice. Yeah. I beat Brian in NA West by 2 spots. Too bad he didn't do some prop bets. Yeah, I always forget about the prop bets. I think
take the win, T-Bird.
I think the picks I had were good. I had nothing but first and second places on the shot callers over there, but I did forget to do a couple prop bets, and I said so to Tyler, and he said, "Well, the prop bets count." And I said, "Great." So, all right.
Yeah. So North America East. Let's move on. You know what? Let's go with the women.
Everyone wants the men. So you're just trying to tease them?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, fine. On the women's side in North America East, overall, there are, I think these numbers are right. Forgive me if they're not right, but they're pretty close. I think there's 14 individual games athletes in the field. That means that they've qualified at least one time for the CrossFit Games in the Elite Open Division. Besides those 14, there are 5 other athletes who've made it in the team competition, and one other, I believe, that hasn't made it as a team or indie that did the teenage games. So that's 20 CrossFit Games competitors there. And then there's 4 others that I would say have been close, meaning that they were within 5 spots of making it at least once in their career. So 24 out of the 40 athletes, at least on the women's side, I would say have a really a good kind of resume that could suggest that they have the potential to make it to the CrossFit Games. And I think in terms of 2 weeks of competition already, we're seeing trends that we typically see, which is that there's usually between 10% and a third of the field that qualifies that are rookies at the CrossFit Games. And so when you look at the picks that I have made here prior to the semifinal starting, and I'm going to stick with a majority of these picks, if not all of them, for the game spots. The only one I might consider swapping out would be Folo, actually, for Paige Semenza. Is that, you see Toomey, Lawson, Brandon, Raptis, Adams. For me, I would draw a line right there. Last year in the East, for the women, we saw 6 women that really separated from the rest of the field. Barnhart was amongst that group, and Brooke Wells certainly could be. So you can potentially extend that line down to 7 athletes, assuming that Barnhart and Wells are competing healthy, which it seems like they are. If that's the case, those 7 athletes, I don't see them missing the CrossFit Games. Patrick?
Yes.
You agree with that?
No, I totally agree. I mean, it's just there's a clear separation there. I mean, obviously you can even push that down to 7 where there's a clear separation. But yeah, definitely the top 5 after Haley. We the question marks with Amanda and Brooke is how healthy are they? Obviously they had a really great quarterfinals, especially after an open where both of them were recovering from very similar injuries, maybe at just different levels. I mean, they I think it was a torn labrum for both of them. Amanda, she suffered hers during the pullover event at the games, and then Brooke did hers, suffered hers right after Wadapalooza when she slipped on some ice, but which led to like less than desirable open performances. But then the quarterfinals, they were both up in, they both were actually went head to head against each other up in Vermont at HWPO headquarters, and you saw that they looked 100% healthy. So if
Speaking
that's
of
the case,
HWPO, how have they been doing so far at the semifinals?
on the men's side, they've had 6 athletes out of the, what is it? What
I think 29. No,
yeah, 6 out of the
no,
29.
less than that. Less than that, because there's 11. There's 11 in
It's
the
29.
men get 10 or 11 here in the East.
Here, 11.
And then and then
women
there's
get
also 1 from Africa and 3 from, so that's 15. So it's 6 out of 25 that HWPO has gotten on the men's side already.
Yeah. Yep. 6 out of the 29. And then 7 total, because if you count Jacqueline Dahlstrom, so that's what, 58. So they've had 7 qualifiers out of the 58 possible qualifiers,
50.
which is, I think, 13% of the
There's only been
13% of the games field as of today are HWPO athletes.
Yeah, so the HWPO has been doing quite well so far. And oh man, there's a lot of good comments in here. But let's start with this comment. No, he absolutely did not. He rarely influences me on anything at all. And I think the opposite could probably be true. We had Erica on as an interview, and we had her on for a reason, because we know quite well who she is, not just through her accomplishments on the team side of competitions, but also because Chad Mueller, the MVP of B.Friendly Fitness, and lives in the same part of Canada and knows her well.
They train at the same gym, and she was on the gym. I mean, yeah, we have a lot of inside information when it comes to some of the Canadian athletes because of Chad, and she qualified on a team last year out of his gym, so he's known her. And I mean, if you look at her resume, especially as a teen athlete, now as a team, and then in what she did this year, it's like, yeah, I mean, that's no influence at all.
PC, let's see what do you think about this question? What is the best possible finish that you think Haley Adams could have at the semifinals this year?
I'm gonna be quite honest, and I completely adore Haley. I've met her many a times. I've known her since, I mean, I judged her when she was a teenage athlete. I mean, she's invited me into her home when she lived in Cookeville. I think she's just, I mean, you got to see a side of her that not many people did through Hiller's amazing, just great documentary that he put out. I mean, that's Haley. She's fun, loving, and everything. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really transfer over to performance. I think 5th is the best case scenario for her, especially against this field. But then I also see a situation where she might not even make it. So I don't think that's possible, but I do see a situation like that happening where she might not make the games. But however, I do see 5th. I mean, she's going to do pretty well in that first event. Outside of Tia, she's probably, and DB, she's probably the best runner in that field. I mean, some might argue she's actually a better runner than DB, but we don't know. We haven't seen the type of athlete she's become and all the training that she's done over the last year. I mean, really the only sneak peek we've had as her as an athlete is what Hiller showed us in her training regimen. But but I think the most important thing is mentally she's in a better place than she's ever been. And I think that's great. And I think that could pay a lot of dividends this weekend. I'll be interested to see what her support system is like this weekend, because in the past she'd always had that Mayhem crew, and I'm sure the Mayhem crew is going to be there helping her. But we'll see.
A lot of comments coming in about Haley here.
Yeah.
And I would say, look, in terms of the best that she can do, you have to keep in mind that Tia Toomey's in this field. So winning it is probably out of the question. Emma Lawson is in this field. So I don't see any of these women challenging Tia and Emma Lawson for the top 2 spots based on everything that those 2 athletes have done in their careers. Haley at semifinals, someone was mentioning earlier, she's only taken second at the MAC and first at the Syndicate Crown in the 2 years that she's competed in.
Now, granted, that second at the MAC was because Tia was in the field. So Tia actually took money from her that year.
Right. And so obviously it's a stage of competition that she does quite well in. There was a lifting complex in one of those. There was a heavy snatch in one of those. So we know that she can overcome a poor performance with a lot of really good performances. If you look at what these workouts are, she should do great on the first one. She should do great on the second one. She should do great on the third one. And I'm going to throw this out here. It won't be the last time you hear me say this. All of the athletes that have qualified for the CrossFit Games in both Europe and North America West have had top 20 or top half finishes on events 2 and 3. And I fully expect that Haley is going to have a top half finish on both of those workouts, probably inside the top 10 on both, and probably inside the top 5 on the toe to bar double under workout. I don't think that there's any threat of Haley Adams missing the CrossFit Games in the East Coast, but I do think that it would surprise me if she made the podium. So I would say that 4th is the highest that I expect her to finish. 7th is the lowest. And that's pretty much the range that I see for Haley this week.
I mean, I could see that. I mean, I could see her, there's certain workouts that Alexis Raptis might struggle on, and Haley Adams would do well on. But 4th, I could see that too. But I think 5th is probably
it's a reasonable pick.
It is.
It's a reasonable pick. Those top 4 women, I feel, have earned through competition the last several seasons to be the top 4 coming into this weekend. Now, we know that Brooke Wells has top 5 potential at the CrossFit Games when she has a perfect season. We know that Amanda Barnard was second at the East last year. We know what Haley Adams is capable of doing. 3 straight top 6 finishes at the Games, only having first and seconds at the semifinal level. So, like we said, 1 through 7, I feel pretty confident that barring injury or illness, those 7 women will occupy 7 of the 11 spots to the Games.
Yeah. No,
in what order? That's where the fun comes in as far as they're concerned, and we'll get to see that unfold throughout the weekend. I will say this. If I was running the Heat 1 app, I would put a limit on the number of picks for Tia-Clair Toomey because I'm picking her for 5 of the 6 events, and I'm picking Danielle for the handstand walk. And I think that that's kind of ridiculous. I wish it was maybe out of a 6 competition that you could only pick 1 athlete for 2 on that, so that you have to show a little bit more depth of knowledge there. But that's how dominant I think Tia is going to be this weekend. We saw Laura get, I think, 574 points in weekend 1. Yeah, he used to have this. That was my idea. He took it away because he wanted it to just be more accessible for more people. But I mean, I'm looking at this field and I'm saying, hey, there's plenty of athletes here that people know, and there's plenty of opportunity. If John Yen said that as well, great. Then we're on the same page there.
Yeah.
And yes, certainly she might be beaten on some workouts. I just think that we're going to see her have 580 or more points out of 600 possible. And those top 7 women are going to take a lot of top 10 finishes. So I'm expecting to see a pretty big drop off.
Yeah.
But I want to focus on the last 4 spots. So unless, Patrick, any final thoughts on the top of the field here?
I will say that handstand walk, I mean, we got this second week in a row, you got to see the handstand walk competition with elite handstand walkers. I saw it in Korea, but it was basically Sahar and Omer were the best handstand walkers there. And then on the men's side, there's a Chinese acrobat that just blew everyone away. But seeing it on the women's side live on the West Coast, it was an exciting race, especially when it was Trista versus Danny Spiegel. But here you have some of the best handstand walk athletes. And obviously, it starts with Danielle Brandon, but I've been calling for this for a while. I would love to see a true test of Danielle Brandon versus Brooke Wells versus Haley Adams. I mean, those are 3 of the best handstand walkers in the world. And if you remember Danielle Brandon, her first event win was in 2019. Who did she beat? And she didn't beat her by much, but she beat Brooke Wells in that handstand workout. And that was kind of like her introduction to everybody. But we have yet to see kind of like that rematch. This will be fun to watch, I think. And I think they're on this workout with the rowing and the handstand walk. I think they might be evenly matched, and I think it'll come down to DB's speed on her hands, but it'll be fun to watch. But yeah, that's about it. I'm just saying that top 7, it's a all-star lineup. You have 7 women that all have top 10 potential at the Games when healthy. That's crazy.
Nadine, could we see a more unknown athlete win event 1 like last time? Yeah. I would say no, just because look at the pedigree. You think there is an athlete that could beat Tia in this workout?
In event 1? Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Okay. I mean,
I don't know who it is, but none of us picked Catalina either. So
Caitlin Bernardin, no.
Yeah, Caitlin Bernardin.
But no one in that field has like I don't know, 7 event wins at the CrossFit Games in long distance running workouts and 15 event wins in barbell cycling workouts like Tia has. And I'm making those numbers up, but they're not far from the truth.
Yeah.
You know, she's so good as a runner, so good with a barbell that this is asking that question this week is totally different than asking it in week 1 or week 2, just because she's in the field. Now, is there an athlete that could come from further down the leaderboard, maybe one of those 15 that don't have the pedigree of being close to or making the CrossFit Games in some capacity that could have a top 3, top 4, top 5 finish? Absolutely. Beat Tia? I don't see it.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Jordan Chefs. I think
Okay.
that I'm saying that correctly. I've heard some people say otherwise, but I've been told it's Chefs. If that's wrong, then Paige, jump ship, Seth Page, please can give me some feedback there. I'm open to it. But Jordan Chefs, I think she missed the CrossFit Games by 1 point last year, or 1 spot, 3 points, something like that. I just want to make sure I get this right. She's 21 years old, 5'7", 155 pounds, and she's been banging on the door. Yeah. She is extremely talented, extremely good. I thought she had a chance to make it last year. She was 13th. They took 12. She was 14th the previous year at only 19 years old in the Granite Games, and I really feel like she's moving in the right direction here. She is my top pick of rookies to make the games out of the East for the women. I think that a lot of people would probably lean towards Greer, but I think that she has a chance to make it. And Patrick, I know that you know about her too.
Yeah, I mean, she both popped on our radar at the same time at Granite Games in 2021, and then we got to see her in 2022, and then last year in Orlando, and you know, we've actually seen her in all her semifinal appearances. And you just look at it, she's evolved. She's gotten better every year, and she's one of those quiet athletes you don't know much about. You know, she does have a very good a very good community affiliate presence behind her. But yeah, I think that's a great pick. I mean, you know, I can only see her. I mean, if she keeps on this trajectory of getting better in semifinals, yeah, this is kind of almost a no-brainer pick for me for Jordan to make the games. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if she finishes even a spot higher or 2 than that.
Yeah. So the thing is that she's going to need to. She's very consistent. Last year, all of her finishes were between 9th and 26th, but she didn't have that kind of home run, that top 5. And like as we said, the top of this field is very strong. So when you're battling for one of those last couple of spots, having that kind of BKG consistency of just being there 10 through 20 on almost every workout goes a long way.
Or the Chris Ibarra consistency.
Chris Ibarra. Yeah,
I can see that consistency coming from her. He doesn't have a win. His worst finish is 15th, but his best finish is a 3rd. I can easily see her doing something like that.
Last year, Fia Sagafi got the 8th spot with 398 points. Jordan Chefs was 13th with 383. That's 15 points separating spots 8 through 13. Brooke Wells was only 4 points behind her. Carolyn Prevost, 5 points behind her. We talked about this last year, and it's going to be the case this year. That's 8 women within 20 points of each other. And last year, those were for 5 spots. This year, they're only for 4 spots. So if you don't know who she is, you can absolutely expect her to be in the mix. I think that she, at her age and with the trajectory she's been on, is going to make a bigger step forward than most of the women in that range. That's the reason why I'm picking Jordan Chefs this weekend.
Yeah, it's a good pick. I like it. Let's talk about Fee. Obviously, Fee is I mean, I don't like the workouts for her, but I don't want to discount Fee. I mean, that girl probably has maybe the largest muscle groups out there, but she has the largest heart, you know. You just never count someone like her. I mean, you would have said the same thing last year with some of those workouts, you know, with bench pressing, with some of the heavy the heavy sandbag, you know, just a lot of those workouts, the sled pull, and but she figured it out, and it's kind of the same thing this year. But I do think she's one of those bubble athletes. I have no problem with her at 9. I have no problem with her making the games, but at the same time, as much as it pains for me to say this, I wouldn't also be surprised if she's again fighting for those last couple spots as well.
I completely agree. And like I said at the start of our East coverage here, I've actually bumped Semenza into one of the game spots. I think that these workouts are really good for her. I think she's oftentimes overlooked a little bit because she
Mhm.
doesn't do anything flashy at really the semifinals or the games level, but she's very consistent. And I do think that her fitness is on par with these women, and the workouts are a little bit more favorable to her. I think that between Sagafi, Greer, Folo, and Carolyn Prevost, that those 4 athletes are going to be fighting for the last 2 spots. But you can't rule out athletes like Shelby Neal, Caroline
Mhm.
Stanley, Caroline Spencer, who have all made the games before as well. And then you have some up and coming athletes like Ashley Wozni, Caitlin Sanders,
Lydia Fish,
Lexi Neely. It's going to be extremely tight in that group 10 through 20. And, as we've seen, athletes that you or I or anyone who's watching might say, yeah, they're making the games. Will the Supernecks, Yona Koski, Colton Mertens, Tudor Magda. Like, these guys are not making the games. There's going to be athletes on the outside looking in. And in the East, there's going to be names like that in the women's side and a lot of names like that on the men's side.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think you know, that pick of Paige, moving her in there, I think it's a very good pick. I mean, these workouts, they're not, none of them are a home run for her, but she's consistent across all of them.
Big picture on the women's side, I'm expecting 2 rookies to make the games. I think Jordan Chefs will be one of them. I think Greer or Folo will get the other spot, and that means that some of the top or the veteran athletes will miss out. But it's going to be tight. I think there's going to be a clear separation at the top, just like we saw last year, and then there's going to be 10 women or so that are flirting with that cut line. Who will be this week's Fiona, Colton? Very difficult to say, but I mean, this is what we're talking about now. If you're if you are Fisagafi, Shelby Neal, Caroline Spencer, Caroline Stanley, these types of athletes, I don't know that they have the same pedigree. They definitely don't have the same pedigree as Yona Koski with making the games 9 times. Brooke Wells does. And, if she's like Brooke Wells and Amanda Barnard are a bit of the wild cards here.
Yeah.
They, based on their injuries and their performances over the past year, we could see some potential for them to miss the games. Based on their performances when they're healthy, there's no expectation of them to miss making the games.
Yeah.
What we know from the conversations we've had with the guys at HWPO, it sounds like they're coming in. It sounds like they're coming in healthy, and I think that they're good bets to make it. So I'm going to stick with them. Obviously, if they're not, and then I don't think those guys would necessarily tell us that. But if they're healthy, I think they're good enough.
Linky with a very bold statement here.
Right. Yep. Right in line.
I do want to. I mean, let's talk about Annika. I mean, this is someone that we both know.
I have one other dark horse I want to throw out there too, but Annika first.
Okay. I think, especially last year, it was a heartbreaking for her, coming down to the last couple of events where she made some tactical, some errors, taking off. I mean, she was one of the first women off the Toto bars last year, grabbed her sandbag, and then, she had to come back because I forgot what it was. She stepped on a line or something like that where she had to come back, and that kind of prevented her going to the games. I think it's going to be one of those things where it comes down to final workout for her again, and how she deals with that pressure, knowing that she's on a cut line spot. She's probably one of the best, maybe after Tia, on the rings. So I'll see, she might be one of the first athletes off the rings in that workout, and it'll come down to those lunges. And we've seen it so many times with the lunges. We saw it with Colton. We saw it with other athletes where they just, they go full send, and that fatigue hits in right those last 10, 15 meters. I'm hoping that doesn't happen with Annika, and I'm hoping that there's some lessons learned there, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be a fight for her. Hopefully she proves me wrong, and then she's in a comfortable spot all year, all weekend, because she's definitely an athlete that probably deserves to compete at the game. She would shine on that stage, and I think people really like her. And I think it's also one of those great comeback stories with all the adversity she's seen, with unfortunate incidences throughout her career the last 4 years, that she finally makes the games. And it'll be one of those emotional moments that we saw with someone like Kyra and some of the other athletes out west. So yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on Annika in those matters, but that's just something that
I think you said it super well. I think she's the fittest she's ever been. I think that there's going to be some workouts she does exceptionally well on. I think there's a couple others that'll be somewhat damage control. And I think if she has a clean execution, she's going to be right there, 10, 11, 12, 13. And I think I'm kind of hoping that she finds a way to sneak in there, because I really would like to see what she can do at the games.
Mm-hmm.
There's an athlete in the field that we haven't mentioned yet. She is a former CrossFit Games athlete, although she hasn't thrown her name in an individual ring in a long time. And I think she has the potential to ruin some people's days this weekend. And that's Chloe Gavin David.
Mm-hmm.
She's 32 years old, 5'7", about 150, 55 pounds. She got 5th place at the East Regional back in 2018. Sevan and I were there doing the coverage. I have her 22nd on there, but I think she's going to do a lot better than that after watching these workouts and thinking about it a little bit more. Very good at legless rope climbs, very good on her hands for handstand walking. She'll handle machines just fine. She's a decent runner. She can cycle the barbell. She's got a lot of experience. I think that Gavin David is probably the name that most people are not looking at that has the biggest potential to play spoiler this weekend. So mark that one down just in case she gets off to a good start. She could be lurking around that cut line the entire weekend. You're on mute, Patrick.
We've seen that a couple times over the last couple of years, where you have athletes who said, they're retired, they're done, whatever, and then they do the Open and they do really well, and they do the quarterfinals and they do even well. And Chloe's like, I think that's that stage in these athletes who want to kind of retire, but they still have that high level of fitness, and they're not specifically training for it, but then they hop in, and then they have like a month or two. They're like, okay, let's do this. Maybe I might do it. I'm going to pick up my training. We saw that with someone like Jamie Hagia, who wasn't expecting to be there. I don't think Chloe was either, but I think that just that baseline level of fitness, she can ruin some people's days.
A couple other athletes just to be aware of in the field. Dana Paran is in this field. She's got a potential to have an amazing performance on the snatch ladder. She's a former Olympic weightlifter. Reese Littlewood, 17 years old. She's already qualified for the games in the teenage division. She's the lone teenage representative on the women's side this year in terms of still being eligible for the teen competition. So it's always fun and been a cool story over the past couple of years to see these teen athletes that are still good enough to compete amongst the individuals. And Jessica Kalagian and Aniston Sudhoff of CrossFit Mayhem teams in the past are both going individual and have both made their way into the field this year. So just a couple of shout outs for those. Don't know how well they'll necessarily do, but thought it was at least worth a mention.
Yeah, there's a couple of teams. Bailey is a former team athlete, I believe, also a Mayhem athlete. But yeah, you see a couple of those athletes. But there was a question about Lydia Fish. I just think about Lydia. You got to see Lydia firsthand. I think she's really talented. She's only, I believe, 20 years old, from Wisconsin. She's training out full time down in Atlanta. With I think her training partner is Ashley Wozni, along with Raptus and all the training crew. But especially the going to struggle on, and I don't know. But she does have a potential to do really well in certain events. I just think the totality of it's going to probably keep her in that 20th spot, like you have her somewhere around there.
All right, let me see a couple comments about the women. Annika needs to perform well on the first event. Absolutely, that would be one of those damage controls. Drew Butcher says he thinks Semenza in instead of Greer. Certainly could happen. Also said he'd bump Follow up ahead of Chefs. We'll see. Someone says you can't count Vellner as HWPO. I don't know. And SPM, as always, thank you for the contribution there. It means a lot to us.
Yeah, it really does. Thank you so much for that. If there's no more questions about the women, I'm excited for the women's field. Sorry. I think anytime you can see Tia perform at it's weird because we're used to seeing Tia just crush it at these bigger stages. And even like Rogue, we don't really have that much interaction with Tia or in some of the top athletes. But when it's on this type of setting, there is a lot more interaction. Because, Brian, it's been a while since I think you've had a conversation with Tia, probably since
14 months.
Yeah. yeah. So when we stopped by, we just kind of made that surprise trip by Proven, and you helped her clean the gym. That's probably
Hey,
the last
Jeff.
time. Hey, Jeff. But I think that's just really cool, like to get a chance to see greatness at that level and talk to her, talk to Shane, and the team. But if you're in that Knoxville area, I mean, that women's field is worth the cost of admission to come and watch, because you're not. I mean, instead, you're going to pay $1,000 for tickets for the games to watch. Is when you can pay, $100 or less to watch these athletes perform in a very more intimate environment. So,
That might be the cost of the ticket, but we were talking about this yesterday, and obviously it's a big topic of conversation. Is why are the North America fans not showing up in the same capacity as they are around the world? And one of the very fair statements that Dave made on his week in review this past is that the barrier to entry is actually a little bit high. When you think back to the days that there were 7, 8 regionals around in North America, most people didn't have to travel that far to get to the regional that was closest to them. And they were in a lot of cities that it wasn't that difficult to necessarily find hotels in. I don't know about Albany, New York, maybe, but a lot of the other ones, and it was super well attended in Albany, New York, nevertheless. Hotels right now in Knoxville during this weekend are $400 a night if you want to stay downtown. That's not appealing to anybody who wants to try to come there. It's not that easy to get there. A lot of people are flying to Nashville and then driving. The hotels and the Airbnb prices are being driven up because they're at a premium. And yeah, even if it doesn't cost that much to get on site, I just don't think those things need to be considered when you're planning a semifinal. If you want people to get there, you need to make it easy for them to get there. There needs to be a big airport nearby, a lot of hotel options so that the supply isn't, confined, and therefore the demand is super, super high. I see people saying bring it to Las Vegas. A lot of people have said Nashville. I saw Salt Lake City. Adrian Conway was promoting them, but there's plenty of options. The cost of the venue is one thing, but you have to consider what's the total amount that a person is going to want to spend to go to a semifinal. And by the way, if you drive down the cost that it takes for them to get there, they're probably coming with more money in their pocket that they'll be able to spend there, which would be good for vendors. So I think that is a valid factor. Dave identified it on the weekend review, and Patrick and I were talking about it yesterday. So for those that were kind of making those mentions there,
it's funny, Linky. We had a chance to talk to Daniel Coos, and he lives 3.5 hours away from Knoxville. But had to fly all the way out to California. Now if you know Daniel, he absolutely would have made that trip no matter what, because it's an opportunity for him to compete in Carson, on that floor and stuff like that. And, he didn't really have games aspirations this year because of all the stuff, but he did bring the point. He's like, if it's this next year, it'll be a little bit different, because, it's 3.5 hours versus a 3.5 hour flight and everything, and the cost he's adding to that. So, and then another reason why I wasn't, and Dave did bring up a good point. I think the lack of California athletes in the field probably hurt attendance, because you had a lot of people from Canada all over the country. Their families just aren't coming. It's usually their coach and maybe their girlfriend or boyfriend, significant other. Regarding costs, we were lucky enough on Saturday. It's like our yearly reunion with Arm & Hammer. He was there with his child, and we were talking to him, and he told him just for him and his son, it was like $150 just to come in Saturday. That's the tickets for him and his son and parking. So, I mean, that's pretty expensive. I mean, that for some people, that's their affiliate membership for a month. And, yeah, I mean, especially, we thought about ideas, and maybe that's something we could do for a show later on, but just trying to what we would do to try to increase participation and attendance at some of these semifinals events. So, but I will say, California, the hotels at least were reasonable and cheaper, even if they were shittier hotels like the one I stayed in. But but they were more affordable than Knoxville, Tennessee. I mean, the closest hotel I could find under $200 was 20 minutes away. And downtown, like you said, was like $400. I mean, we found an Airbnb that's somewhat reasonable. That was around $200 a night. But yeah, I just don't understand it.
All right, let's shift over
All right.
to the men's field. I think this is the most compelling semifinal field in the world in terms of one category, one region. By my count, there's at least 16 individual games athletes, 2 others that have competed on a team. There might be more than that. 1 other, Nate Ackerman, that was a teen games champion. Obviously, Dallin Pepper was also, but he counts as an individual. And 12 others who've been within 5 spots of making the CrossFit Games, including people like Jake Berman, Taylor Self, and Tyler Christoffel, who have been within 1 or 2 spots on multiple occasions. Tyler Christoffel, I believe, has come cumulatively at 5 separate competitions, 9 total places away from making the games in the past 3 years. That's how competitive it is over there. At least 31 of these 40 athletes are serious contenders at every competition that they show up to. Now, these picks, I have changed these picks quite a bit since I first made them in some capacity. I see Lynn getting furious about Jack Farlow immediately. But before the semifinals, this was the list that I had thrown out there. And this, like I said, is just, it is insane to try to pick these guys. First of all, on this list, and still on my list now, I do not have Will Morad making the CrossFit Games. Will Morad is a 5 times CrossFit Games athlete. He's never been higher than 10th, but he's never been worse than 22nd at the games. He did win the Masters division this year, and he's been at the semifinals in the last 3 seasons, 4th, 5th, and 6th. In his 4 years at regionals, he finished between 3rd and 11th. The guy's insanely good at this stage of the season, and I just don't see any way that he makes the games this year. And I see you guys are saying indecisive, whatever. This is such a hard field to make. So currently, after everything I've seen, and again, Jason Hopper and Jeff Adler have never finished worse than 1st and 2nd at a semifinal.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dallin Pepper is going to win the semifinal this weekend. What do you think, Patrick?
I mean, how do you? I made a mistake once of discounting the defending CrossFit Games champion before, and I'm still living with that. I mean, that athlete's mom still gives me shit to this day. That athlete, like, we talked to that athlete, he keeps receipts. And I don't want. I mean, it's Adler. I mean, he's just so consistent, and I don't see a workout here where. I mean, you name what workout do you think Dallin's going to beat Jeffrey in?
Final. Man, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, Adler probably the pick. I just think these workouts line up great for Dallin, and I like him at least one of the top 2 spots.
They absolutely do. And again, if Dallin wins this semifinal, no one's going to be surprised by that. But it's still hard to pick. I mean, Jeffrey isn't as dominant as Tia, but I still, again, that's how I look at it. I don't see Dallin. Maybe 1 or 2 workouts, Dallin finishes ahead of Jeff.
I think he beats him on the leg list, snatch ladder, in the final.
Okay, so that's 3. Okay,
but the big question will be, can he overcome the deficit that he's already in after event number 1? Because someone said it here, and I think this is probably fair. Dallin's been working on his running, but 15 to 20, similar to BKG, is probably fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Adler's a great pick if you're going to pick him. I just feel like Dallin has a potential to shake things up in the podium this year. I like those as the top 2 picks. I think, Jason beat Roman last year. I think that's a really good shout, but I actually bumped Farlow all the way up to 4th on my picks for Heat 1. I do think everything I've heard about Jack Farlow is that the guy he's improving at a rapid rate. He's as fit as he's ever been. He's lean. He's still strong. He's probably going to win the snatch. Well, that's going to be a crazy event, but I think he can win the snatch ladder. I think Farlow for a top 5 is maybe a good call this weekend. Dallin does have some crazy stuff with that.
Him and Hopper.
Those.
Yeah, him and Hopper.
So, yeah, I mean, look, Adler, Pepper, Krennikov. I saw someone asking about the chances Roman doesn't make the games. Roman isn't great at the semifinal. He does better at the games. He does better at Rogue. He does better when there's more tests. His breadth of fitness is extensive. And he does have sometimes a hole relative to the top guys that can be a little bit exposed. I think he shored that up in terms of the same. I think he shored that up in terms of the the ring muscle ups, and I think that he will continue to have a good ring muscle up workout in the final. Roman, I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
Travis Mayer. Let's talk about Travis Mayer.
Yeah, let's talk about Travis Mayer.
I mean, it's ridiculous that we're picking him sixth and people are questioning it when he's a lock to make top 5 at the CrossFit Games this year. But Travis is an 8-time CrossFit Games athlete. His best finish was back in 2016, where he finished 10th. And 7 of the 8 years, he's been inside the top 20. He's one of the best who's ever done it in terms of longevity, but he doesn't have that top, he got one top 10 finish in those 8 appearances. So he's just kind of always lurking in that middle third of athletes at the CrossFit Games. Even in the regionals era, when he was doing really well, he never finished better than 3rd at a regional. He was 4th at the MAC in 2021. His best ever qualifying stage was 2nd place at the Renegade Games in 2022. I think I dropped him down to, I have him in 8th on the Heat 1 app pick, so a little bit lower than this. But I do think that these workouts are good for Travis. I do think that he's fit enough to make it to the games despite the strength of the field. PC, what's your take?
I love the guy. I mean, how do you pick against a guy who's, he's the ultimate dad? And I, talking to Alexis says that Travis has kind of came into the season with, a chip on his shoulder. Like he's got something to prove, and he's completely healthy. I believe it was a wrist. Was that a wrist issue he had?
Not 100% sure.
Yeah, I think it was a wrist issue. I think he's fully recovered from that. We saw a great performance, a typical Travis performance at Rogue where he finishes finishes 6th. Was it 6th again? That he always finishes 6th at Rogue.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think that he can, he's another one of those guys that he finished. I like where he's at there, but I could also see him maybe cracking the top 5, maybe finishing a 4th. But I also can see him falling down to somewhere like 9th or 10th. It all depends on it. It really does matter to me how I watch that athlete perform event 1. If I see, even if it's someone that, yeah, he's about to say no. Yeah, I'm just buttering him up. But I have to see them in workout 1. Their body language, if they're struggling, how they're dealing with everything. I mean, if Travis is having problems, Travis is normally a decent runner. If he's having some issues on the run, he looks like he's laboring his breathing, and if he looks tired doing the shoulder to overheads, then it's not a good sign for the whole weekend. And I just don't know. It's like I haven't seen enough of him. Even though he has done quite a few off seasons. I think he did Madrid and then he also did Rogue. I haven't seen much of him since then. I mean, we saw him, I guess, on a team at Wadapalooza, but I'm fine with Travis at 6.
Yeah, and like I said, I think he will. I think he might do a little bit worse than that, but I do think that he's got a great chance to make the CrossFit Games.
Yeah.
Right behind him, you see Saxon or right ahead of him on this list, actually, you see Saxon Panchik. Saxon's made the game 5 times. He was at regionals between 2015 and 2018. He got better there every single year, finally qualified in 2018, and he made it every year since until getting injured and having to withdraw from the semis last year. The previous 2 semifinals, he won them. So you add him to the mix of Adler and Hopper, who's never finished worse than 1st or 2nd at a semifinal. Obviously, that's not going to be the case for all 3 of them this year. But Saxon Panchik kind of fits that build of a little bit smaller athlete that we've seen have some struggles. But I would say that he's probably better than the guys outside of Yonakoski who's had those struggles overall. His CrossFit Games performances and his semifinal performances would say that. I think that people are discounting him a little bit compared to, great question from JC Isaacs, when he is healthy. Mm-hmm. He's back with Facundo. I don't think he's technically considered a Mayhem athlete, but he has been working with Facundo again. Obviously, they had a great pedigree together.
Mayhem is claiming him. When they listed their semifinal athletes, Saxon was listed as one of their athletes.
Okay, well, neither here or there, I guess, for me. But for them, maybe it matters. But I know he's with Facundo. And I don't have any reason to think that Saxon Panchik's not making the CrossFit Games, but against this field with these workouts and this depth of field, how good do you think he can possibly do? Is podium possible, or is it more likely that he'll be like 8th to 10th?
I mean, podium's definitely possible with someone like Saxon because we've seen him do it against, very similar fields. And I mean, we've seen him do it without winning events. I think about that Granite Games, 2 years ago or three, the first Granite Games that he beat a field that included Fikowski, Chandler Smith. I mean, there was a great lineup. I mean, this one's a little bit deeper, but we've seen Saxon, just do enough to win a semifinal. So it's completely doable. If anyone can do it, it's someone like Saxon. That's why I think, someone like, do I think someone like Travis has a chance of winning the semifinal? No. But Saxon Panchik, yes, I do think Saxon Panchik can win the semifinal. I think he has a better chance of winning the semifinal than someone like Jason Hopper or Roman. So if you look at my three favorites, it'd be Adler, Pepper, and Panchik as someone that can win the semifinal.
Damn.
But then I also can think, but Saxon's also that guy, depending on his health or how well these other guys do, that can finish fifth. So he's going to be contending for a podium spot either way.
A couple other guys that are going to be in the mix here, and just kind of setting the stage. When you looked at last year's semifinal here, Adler, Hopper, Pepper, Krennikov, then there was a 40-ish point drop-off. There was a pretty tight group: Cornway, Morad, Olsen, who's not competing, Luke Parker, who's not on this list, and Alex Vigneault. And then there was another big drop to Farlow, Sprague, and Spencer Panchik, who made the games. Cornway and Vigneault were the kind of the bookends of that middle region. I have them both here in kind of the middle section here. Alex Vigneault was 6-time games athlete. 2015 was his first year there. His best finish was at 8th in 2021. He's been competing at this qualifying stage level since 2014 regionals and semifinals. Clearly a veteran of the sport, clearly really good on specific workouts. He had one of the top 5 workout scores in the world. They all came from this region in the final last year. I think that there's a couple workouts he can do pretty well on here, keep himself in the mix. He's strong enough on the snatch ladder to do well. He's a good enough runner. He's good on machines. Are you more worried about Sam Cornway or Alex Vigneault in terms of punching another ticket to the CrossFit Games?
Both. I mean, more Alex, but both. I mean, seriously, both. Think about it. How long me and you, we've been on the Samuel train for a while. And we thought him going team was that, that was going to help him out. And then he was going to come out of team and then boom. I mean, I think one year we both had him in top 5. I think it was the year that he had to withdraw or he didn't make the cut. I remember specifically me and you had a bet during one of the events and I won that bet and you had to do burpees. No, it wasn't you. It was your friend. Yeah, it was. It
was what's his name from Blue City?
Yeah.
Teddy.
Yeah. It was Teddy. But I mean, Samuel has all the talent, but for whatever reason, it's not transferring to live competition outside of Wadapalooza. I mean, obviously he did really well in Wadapalooza, but this is a guy that again we've predicted to finish top 5 at the games, and he hasn't yet to reach that potential, and now so I'm kind of like knocking him back down. Like I think 7th, him making the games, yeah. But I put him in that same company with someone like Alex, where it's like, hey, they're going to make the games, but what are they going to do at the games? I don't know. I mean, but
yeah, Samuel Cornway, 3rd place in the Wadapalooza 2022, 6th place last year. He competed on a team in between those 2 years there with the Mayhem team. 4 times he's been to the games. His best finish was online in 2019. His best live finish is 22nd, so he hasn't even cracked the top 20 when we've projected that he has the potential to make it to the top 10. Obviously, he also competed on a team 1 year there, which they won. He first showed up at the regionals in 2018, very competitive East Regional. He beat Jeff Adler at that regional, finished 11th.
Yeah,
I think Adler was 15th or 16th. Check for sure. Yeah, 18th. Sorry. So, Samuel Cornway, clearly impressive. 5th place in the regional last year or semifinal last year, and has the potential to go. But these are the guys in that middle range with the group that's surging up towards them that are definitely at risk. And let me just address a couple things here from the. Go ahead, finish that thought.
You did say he finished 5th last year, but that was without Travis, who wasn't there, and Saxon, who was injured. So. Right. I mean, I think that's why it's a great slot for him then, because if those two were in the field last year, I think he would have finished. I don't think he would have finished 5th. if those two guys would have been healthy and at that semifinal. So, but go ahead.
We got plenty of more guys to talk about. What I want to address a couple comments about some people we've already talked about. What about Jason on the legless event? Will he be better than Dallin? And I'll couple this with a comment from JR or Fraser about JR that Jason's lost 5 pounds. Will be interesting how it affects his body weight movements. I think that's great that Jason's lost 5 pounds. We already saw from the Taylor versus the World in the quarterfinals that his upper body pulling has the work that he's been doing with JR is paying off tremendously. And I think Jason is a great pick to do extremely well on both the legless rope climb and the ring muscle up workout. Someone had made a comment about Roman. Does he have more holes than anyone else in the field? No, he has fewer holes than almost everybody in the field.
I think everyone has the same amount of holes.
Jason showed that he's been working on his body weight movements. Don't doubt the guy who won Taylor versus the World. Yep, absolutely. Okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about Taylor Self. Clearly, Taylor Self right now is one of the more popular guys in the world of CrossFit with all the stuff that he's doing on the Sevon podcast between the Taylor versus the Worlds and the Kill Taylor series. I think they're doing a ton of good in terms of driving interest. I don't necessarily approve of the way that he talks about some of the other athletes, and I think that he would be wise to stop doing that. But he's in terms of an athlete, it's a very interesting conversation to have. I would never recommend to an athlete to travel across the country and go do some work in the West Coast and then come back and try to make it to the CrossFit Games for your first time in a field like this. However, I know that Taylor is taking this competition and he's applying a certain mental attitude to it that I think is extremely beneficial for him. So everything that he's doing is basically, I'm just going about my life, and then I'm also going to do this open. I'm going about my life, and I'm going to do the quarterfinals with my friends. I'm going about my life, and I'm going to show up to the semifinals in Knoxville, and I'm going to compete, but I don't want to take it too seriously. That's a directive that he's been projecting. He's still doing Kill Taylor tomorrow. That's a super intense workout that he's going to do. And I don't think they've announced the workout yet, but I'm hoping that he's considered not maybe duplicating some of the movements that he'll need to execute on this weekend. All of those things aside, remember what I referenced Taylor earlier in when we were talking about some stuff. 2021, I was there at the Granite Games, and I thought that he had a chance to make the Granite Games or to make the CrossFit Games, and he absolutely did. He made an execution error on the dumbbell thruster running workout on Friday night, a workout that he should do extremely well on. And on Sunday morning, when I talked to him, he was still dwelling on that. This was after he'd snatched 295 pounds and put himself on the map right off the bat amongst some great snatchers that were in that field. Despite being in his head after that workout on Saturday and Sunday, he still finishes 7th, missed by 6 points behind Nick Matthew and Colton Mertens. We know how good those two guys are. Then he goes on to the last chance qualifier where there's only 4 workouts. Against, I think, 28 or 29 guys that signed up that year, he finished in the top 6 on 3 of those workouts. I think it was a 2nd, a 3rd, and a 6th. But he took 28th on the dead stop deadlifts, which is one of probably his worst strength movement, and he ends up missing the games by 37 points. He also competed in Wadapalooza that year, where he took 10th place. Outside of Phil Toon, who finished ahead of him, the rest, Phil Toon made the games also, legally or not. The rest of the guys were all games athletes, and there were 10 other CrossFit Games athletes in that field that Taylor beat, including Jason Hopper, who was 1 spot behind him. So in terms of Taylor's physical potential, just from those 2 competitions, or those 3 competitions that we saw, he absolutely is going to be in the conversation to make it to the CrossFit Games. Now, that was a long time ago. If you fast forward through the period of time where he had those surgeries and he's been training like a savage and his diet is exactly what you would want a competitive CrossFit athlete to be, and his lifestyle is he's all in on this stuff, these workouts are great for him. He could not ask for a better lifting event than a snatch ladder. I just told you that he hit a 295-pound snatch 3 years ago in competition. He's hit 265-pound snatches in training regularly, 275-pound snatches recently. Doing dynamic squatting movements was the last thing to come back to him, but he feels a lot more comfortable in the snatch than he does in the squat clean right now. And that's like, if all of the lifting things that could have come out could not be a better case scenario. running and power clean and jerks. Well, he's been doing power clean and jerks at 275 with running workouts for the past year, and he's as good as anyone I've ever seen at it. So that workout's going to be amazing. He actually could win the legless rope climb workout. He can keep up with the bigger guys on the bike. He's very efficient on any kind of getting over movement, the box jump step downs, if you saw on Instagram the other day. And he can do legless rope climbs in 3 pulls, touch the top and come back down, show control. He's really good at that. Rowing and handstand walking, he's pretty fast on his hands, and he showed his capacity on the rower. It's not the same as some of the biggest guys in this field, but I think he can have a top 10 finish. And the last workout is a little bit of a toss-up. The 5-rounder with the front squats, he won't have the fastest cycle rate on the front squat, but he's exceptional at toes to bar and double unders. And, well, I know there's guys that are better than him in terms of speed on double unders, but he's efficient and he can recover on them. I think Taylor has from a physical standpoint, has as good a chance as anyone who's never made the CrossFit Games to punch a rookie ticket this year. But for him, the biggest question is going to be how he handles adversity. Because as you guys know, he can be pretty abrasive in terms of reacting to things when they don't go his way or he doesn't like what's going on. And if that happens in competition, it is the defining thing between people who are great at this sport and people who are almost great at this sport. PC?
He doesn't make the games. Taylor doesn't believe he makes the game. So I mean, if he doesn't think he's going to make the games, I mean, he's already given himself an out. Like if he doesn't make the games, he has an out. Like I wasn't training for, or I wasn't ready, or I told myself. So if he already has that mindset, then I don't think he'll make the games. And it is what it is. I mean, it's nothing personal. I think he absolutely, like all the things you said, absolutely has all the talent and capabilities. Workouts, they line up great for him. But I think the pressure will get to him. I think he's, I don't think the mindset's there. And if he has any doubt that he's not going to make the games, then he's not going to make the games. And I just think he has he has all these people around him, surrounding him. I mean, he's going to be at a house with all the same people. He's going to be doing all these post day recaps and stuff at. I mean,
he does have one other thing going for him.
What?
HCR CBD.
No, of course. I mean,
clearly a sponsor of ours and a sponsor of theirs. And he's been, I know that Taylor is actually using the stuff that HCR has been sending him, and he does attribute it to doing well and feeling good in recovery so that he can hit the workouts aggressively.
But like Carl said, he hope he doesn't buckle under pressure. And I think, he created that pressure for himself. And we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens. But again, he's already given himself an out if he doesn't make the games, and everyone else has too. And so I have no reason, if he doesn't believe, if he's not completely sold on him making the games 100%, then why should I, but again, absolutely. He has the talent, the ability, everything. He's going to make the games next year. I just don't think this year, which is fine. That I think that's what Taylor's kind of projected himself anyways. Like this year was kind of like a, let's see what happens type year, and then go in the next year. But, I think that this year, I also think the volume's that's going to surprise him. We kind of saw that versus Taylor versus the world when they did quarterfinals. He kind of wore down there at the end. This is different. It's more bigger stakes are on the line. So we'll see what happens. But right now, yeah, I don't think he makes the games. You have him at 9th. I probably think he's going to be closer to like 15th. But we'll see. I mean, if he proves me wrong, which he shouldn't be proving me wrong, he should be proving it to himself and everyone else. But if he does it, that's great. That's awesome. That's an amazing story, and he's going to do really well. And we both know he's the type of athlete when he's at the games, especially like if he was at the Madison games, thing, he would be a top 20 athlete. I don't know how it's going to be at Fort Worth, but he's the type of athlete, if he's at the games, he's a games athlete. Like those workouts will be really, the games programming will be probably more suited for him than semifinals or quarterfinals.
Same question as earlier. What's the highest you think Self could finish? I think maybe 7th is the best he can do, and Patrick's probably nailed it on the head. 15th to 17th is probably the lowest. He's very, very good. And we'll have to see. We haven't seen him in competition for a while. Obviously, this is true. He has had a lot of adversity in his life. He handles it. He's handled it very well in some cases. And, we're going to have to see how that translates to competition.
And that's one of the reasons why I root for Taylor, because as someone who's faced adversity myself, he's very open about it, stuff like that. We need someone like that. A lot of these athletes, I mean, everyone goes through some adversity, but Taylor has a very unique story, and his journey, and I love that about them, and I think it's great that he shares that, and because I do the same thing, so that's why I root for him. But but I don't think he's really all in on himself, so I'm not going to be all in on him either. So.
There's several other guys that we want to talk about. The last person on this list that we haven't talked about is Austin Hatfield. Austin Hatfield is in this category of athlete that I've been kind of referencing throughout the build-up to the semifinals, along with Victor Hoffer and Bill Leahy, who are getting a ton of praise, including votes for being one of the top 25 fittest guys in the world, despite the fact that they haven't qualified for the games yet or done maybe anything super notable. Now, Austin Hatfield did win at Crash Crucible this year. He also placed 14th in Wadapalooza. We saw Victor Hoffer make it to the games. We saw Bill Leahy have an injury, and we never got to see his competition take place. Do you think that Austin Hatfield makes the games this year or barely misses out like he did last year?
I think he makes it. I mean, he's been dialed. He's been dialed in. It's almost like, again, I hate to bring Taylor in this conversation, but he's almost been like opposite of Taylor. He's been kind of silent. He's been at Mayhem. He's been dialed in. It's all been about him. But Austin's also a very unassuming, it's unassuming person. You look at his social media, he's not very active on that. Really, if you see anything, it's usually from Mayhem putting out. Rich has said nothing but great things about him in terms of how he trains and everything. Talking to some of the other people that his training partners at Mayhem, they said that this guy's legit. There are going to be some things that are kind of that might that might hang up, but I can see him being another Chris Ibarra, where his worst finish might be a 15th, but I think he can have a bunch of top 3, top 8 finishes. But
I think this comment from Lynn is certainly valid. I don't think Austin will. He's like Colton, and sadly Colton didn't make it. But Chris Ibarra did end up making it. Harry Lightfoot, another athlete that I would say is quite similar to these guys, did end up making it. I think that that Austin's going to be close to the cut line. He was close to the cut line last year, and we didn't give a lot of attention because we didn't know that much about him. I love the fact that he went and competed at 2 very different competitions in the offseason. I talk about this a couple times recently, that there's 2 types of off-season competitions you can compete in. If you're good enough to get to a Wadapalooza, Dubai, or a Rogue Invitational type, then it's great because you get to test yourself against some of the best. And I'm talking about people who haven't made the CrossFit Games before. But on the other hand, you can go and compete at Crash Crucible, which we'll see. The level of Crash Crucible might be getting pretty high this year. But the Summit Games, Desert City, Monster Games, these type of events. And in those competitions, you're going to be more competing for the win. He did one of each. He went to Crucible. He competed against Colton, Jack Rosema, who we haven't talked about yet, Colton, James Sprague. He beat them all. Then he went to Wadapalooza. And Wadapalooza, much different caliber of field. But if you look at the people that he was finishing right next to, 1 spot ahead of him, Colton Mertens. 2 spots ahead of him, Harry Lightfoot. 3 spots ahead of him, CJ Gerald. Right below him, Jack Rosema. All those guys very similar in terms of physique and style. And the people that were in the top 10, Ricky, Furkowski, Quant, Vellner, Farlow, Cornway, Sprague, Krennikov, Guimayara, Spencer Panchik. So it's similarly to Taylor. When he's competed in these competitions against that caliber of athlete, he's not one of the top 10 best guys there, or the guys that are the top 10 in the world. He's not beating those guys yet, but he's knocking on the door. And he is very raw. He's done 4 competitions. This will be his 4th live competition in a year. Semis, Crucible, Wadapalooza, semis again. I think he's got a legitimate chance. He's got incredible skill set. JR has talked about it extensively. The body type is Fraser-esque. And some of the things that he's done are similar. I don't know. I think it's going to be close. 1 or 2 spots in, 1 or 2 spots out. But if I was looking for rookies out of this field to make it to the games, Self and Hatfield are the top 2 guys. Yes, for the 3rd time that you've asked Augustus, yeah, go to Summit Games. It's going to be amazing.
It should be fun.
I would love to see you there.
Yeah. Brian and Lauren will be on the broadcast. And yeah, it would be really cool. I can't wait for that new venue. But yeah, Linky, go.
A couple other names that we definitely have to talk about. Some of you have asked about them. We'll start with T-Bird here. No Spencer Panchik. So I know that I think Audrey was giving me a hard time about being indecisive. I am indecisive in this region, and I think with good reason, as you guys can see why.
Mhm.
So I think Spencer Panchik is in this conversation. Spencer Panchik is interesting. He's made the games twice. Both times that he's made the games, he's made it as the last man in. Not that comforting overall, especially when you look at a field like this. In the 2 years that he's made the games, he's made it into the top 20. So like his brother, he's shown some good capacity there. He's been competing at this level since 2017 in the regionals, and he's really good. I think he's going to be one of the last two guys out this year. So I'm not counting him out. I would never count him out, but I think that the field is good and that the strengths of some of these athletes are a little bit better than his. So I think that Spencer Panchik barely misses this year.
Do you think Spencer, if he does make it in, being one of those one spots, we can crown him the Cole Sager of the East?
Yeah, it's getting close to that.
Yeah, it really is. Maybe not in that fashion that Cole Sager does it, but I mean, like I said, the last 2 years he's been the last guy in, and then he goes to the games, and he's finished top 20. Yeah.
Though, surprise of the North America East semifinal last year was Luke Parker.
Mm-hmm.
He's in the field again this year. Sarah Cooper, I hope he makes it. Christian Cutler, perfect comment. I think Luke gets the final rose this time. I think that these workouts are great for Luke Parker. I think they really complement his skill set in a very similar way that the workouts did last year. And while I wasn't expecting him to be that good last year, I do expect him to be in the mix this year. Clearly, there's been a lot going on in his life outside of the gym as well. Sometimes that can be a hindrance or a distraction from doing well in competition. Sometimes it can be just what you need to have that balance in your life. I think he's still at the Mayhem gym every day, training hard, training with some of the best in the world. And I think he's coming in here willing to prove that last year wasn't a fluke. Congratulations on the gender announcement that they had the other day. Luke Parker, fighting chance this weekend or no?
Yeah, definitely, Luke. I definitely agree with you in terms of like things outside. He's made a lot of Mayhem missions trips. He's done a lot of self-exploring. Him and his wife, they're expecting a child, a lot of stuff, but his life circles around his family, his faith, and fitness. Actually, what am I forgetting? Family, faith, service, right? Or is that
Yes,
the four cornerstones? But I mean, he actually lives by that. And it's he's been living that, probably more than ever this past year since the games last year. He took a little bit of time off after the games, but he's a guy who has a lot of stuff going on. I just don't know how it affects him. He's, he made it as a game. I think he's 30 this year, so he made it to the games last year at 29. And then, that's a pretty long time to wait to get your first games trip, but he obviously waited, start a little bit later. But when I will say the Mayhem training environment, the one that he's a part of, we've seen it firsthand. But it's like it's almost doubled in size this year in terms of the people that are there now. You got Jorge. I mean, we're going to talk about all these guys. I mean, Dre Strom, Jorge. Seth Stovall, Jack Rosema. He'll make trips up there. Caron's a Mayhem guy, but whenever those guys are around there, they're all training. So it's like every day is like a competition for them, depending whether they're matched up or not. They're looking at each other's times. They're seeing what's going on. I mean, that's just the competitive nature. And Luke, being a former athlete, he's a competitor. So, he's definitely going to be fighting for those spots. And I think you said it before. There's going to be probably 9 people fighting for those last 2 spots. And it's going to be close.
It will. I mean, look, it is going to have to filter out at that point. But like I said, 3/4 of this field are absolute savages.
Mm-hmm.
PT, we're going to do a little either or for Jason
Okay.
Isaacs here, depth of the field.
All right.
First up, we got 2 guys that you just mentioned, Alexander Caron and Jack Rosema. Who do you like better chance to make the games this year?
Caron.
Caron has 4 times made the CrossFit Games before. He's also been there once on a team in 2019. He's made the games the first time in 2018. He's had some injury issues. Do you think the pec comes into play at all this weekend?
Not with the workouts. Maybe on the final workout. Obviously with the dip in the dip in the muscle ups, but I don't think it does. I mean, I don't think Corone would show up. I mean, of course he did it last year, showed up to less than 100%, but I don't know. I think Corone. I mean, and I like Jack. You know, I like Jack a
Jack
lot.
Rosema, if you're not familiar with Jack Rosema, he was third at Crash Crucible this past year. You can go back and watch that coverage. As we mentioned, he was 15th in Wadapalooza. Check this out. Last 3 years at semis, 15th, 15th, and 13th. He missed the games by 1 spot last year. 9th and 8th the last 2 years in the quarterfinals amongst the North America East men's field. And he has said that he's not just coming for a game spot, he's coming for a podium spot. Obviously, that's a super ambitious statement to make against this field, but the guy has all the belief in the world. He reminds me of John Wood out on the West Coast. You never want to take your eyes off of him, but he hasn't been able to break through yet. It'll be curious to see if this is the year that he's able to do it. All right, next two up. Tyler Christoffel and Jorge Hernandez, excuse me.
Oh my gosh. Jeez.
We got Lynn here saying that Jorge should get an automatic bye to the games because he's just that cute.
Oh man. Jeez. I mean, that's a tough one because I know those God, they're so similar. I mean, everything, like their background, they're former collegiate baseball players. I'm gonna have to give Jorge the nod on this just because Jorge is going in there with like no expectations. You know, this is his first year as Indy. You know, him and Roman are I think they're grouped together as training partners. He just looks very like relaxed, very free. You know, he's been there at the biggest level. I mean, as a team athlete. And I think Tyler has more pressure on him because one, he's a little bit older. He's been doing it for a while. He's been missing out. And I think Jorge, because he doesn't have that added pressure, is like it's the edge. But they're so similar and they're so close. I mean, you look at it. Their strengths and weaknesses are essentially the same. They're both excellent squatters. I mean, if there's a 1 rep max front squat, I mean, Jorge and Tyler would be right up there near the top of that. I mean, they're just lugless rope climbs. They're both excellent at. We saw that with Jorge when they're at Rogue when him and Justin Medeiros were in that knockout event. I mean, this is just it's tough, but I'm gonna give the edge of Jorge here, and I'm sorry, Tyler. I'll text you, and my bad, but I'm gonna give Jorge the edge here, and Tyler proved me wrong.
Yeah, I already gave Tyler Christophel's credentials. The guy's been as close as anyone over the last 3 years who hasn't made the games. Both of them have competed at the games and had some success there in the team division. Jorge Fernandez he's all in this year. He's been contacting us for some information to be able to dial in some pacing strategies, workout strategies. He's taking his training very seriously, and I think that he, is going to show up with all the things in place to set himself up for success. How well he can do against this field is unknown. He also went to Dubai and competed, so he's put himself out there and done an individual competition against a strong field, which I think is advantageous. He didn't do great there, but you think about Luke Parker last year. He didn't do great at TFX. He shows up and hits home runs when it matters most at the semifinal, and maybe that happens for Jorge.
Yeah.
All right, we'll shift outside of the Mayhem family a little bit here because we had a question. Well, we'll come back to him. But we had a question about Ben Smith, and we had another one about Ben Boulanger. So between these two Bens, PC, who do you like the most?
Benoit, and I'm giving him the edge because the Lex factor, and nostalgia's sake. I mean, Ben comes back to Knoxville, which was the last time he competed as an individual semifinal. I believe was the MAC, and he actually did well, especially in the. That first day, the lift. It was at the 1 rep max snatch.
You're talking about Ben Smith?
Yeah. Back in 2021.
Was that the Smith? Was it in 2021 or was it the complex that he did?
I think it was 2020. It was 2021. It was the snatch. It was a 1 rep max snatch. He was
10th place that year, and he was one of those guys that hit the 300-pound snatch. Yes, exactly right.
Yeah, so that's 2021. So he's returning to that city. I mean, he looked good. But I just don't think I don't think his overall fitness is on par with some of these other people, especially someone like Benoit. I think Benoit has just been, from what Lex has been telling us, is like he's an animal. He's one of those guys that's just gonna, not Lex, but Caroline Lambre. I mean, she doesn't coach.
Oh, Alexis Dutois talked about him as well.
Yeah, she did as well. But it's yeah, if Lambray's coaching just only another athlete outside of Adler, she's not wasting her time, and
she's been coaching him for a
years
long
now.
time. He's
Yeah.
made great strides in the right direction.
Jack Farlow told us. I mean, this comes from Jack Farlow. Farlow told us that Wadapalooza is like he's legit. He's someone to keep an eye out on, and he's part of that team that they had at Wadapalooza. And yeah, I'm going to go Benoit on this, just based on overall fitness at this point in their career.
Yeah, Boulanger, 2020 he was competing in the RX division at Wadapalooza. Yeah, he was 10th, I believe. He transitioned to the elite division in 2022, where he was 22nd. He competed at the Atlas Games and took 10th in 2022 as well. And he went team this year instead of individual at Wadapalooza, and he's basically been priming and focused on getting ready for the semifinal. So I think this is the best version of him that we'll see yet. You see, I have him there 16th. That certainly means that I think he has a chance. But as you guys are, if you did not already understand the depth of this field, I mean, it's crazy. I'm gonna do a little 3 for here.
Okay.
All guys that are at Mayhem. Yeah, we got Dre Strom, Seth Stovall, and Nate Ackerman. If you have to pick one who's going to make the biggest threat to a game spot, who you taking?
Seth Stovall.
Seth Stovall. He reminds me a little bit of Jack Rosema, honestly.
He does.
19th last year. He's also been in the top 20 of the quarterfinals the last 2 years, and he's just kind of having these consistent performances that are on the fringes, waiting to make that next step forward. You've worked with him in the past a little bit. What do you like about Seth this weekend?
He's stronger than Jack. I mean, I know you're just looking at results by, but in terms of athletes, you couldn't have different athletes. Seth is he's a worker. He's someone that many times that Rich has said that he loves the kid just because he comes up, he doesn't complain, just shows up, he does the workout, and then he disappears. Probably working one of his 3 part-time jobs that he has, and that's what he does. He made that move, that sacrifice. Graduated high school, packed up a van, drove all the way to Cookeville specifically for these moments. I wish Seth would do more competitions outside of the game season to gain that valuable experience. I know that he was supposed to compete at Crash Crucible, and then he withdrew, he didn't show up or something like that. But he's another guy. I think he's done a couple like local competitions that Dre's beat him at, actually, that one in Nashville to last year. Dre actually beat him in that competition. I think Ben Davidson was 3rd, but yeah, I like Seth just based on just pure athletic ability, and just he showed me a lot last year at semifinals. He came there with no expectations, had a fairly decent finish. What place did he finish at semis last year?
I think it was 19th.
Yeah, 19th, which was great. Yeah, but I just Dre's Dre. It's like that's someone that we were pretty high on last year before he got hurt and withdrew from the year. I remember you talking. He's like, I think I'm gonna put Dre in my top 100. I'm like, I think it's an excellent fucking pick. Excuse my language, but he was at one time he was thought to be the protege of Rich. He just missed it regionals in 2017 due to some unfortunate no reps and the ring muscle ups in that year. But I think he said he wanted to give him one more shot. And then out of those 3, I think I'd put who was the 3rd one?
Nate Ackerman.
Yeah, Ackerman. I think Ackerman's a couple years away. I mean, he's a Dom protege, and I think next year, especially when Daniel Coos could be there to be his like full-time training partner, I think they're going to level each other up. They're really close. They're really good friends. I think he's having fun, and I think you're going to see that with Nate at this event. Is like he's coming in with no expectations, unlike Dre or Seth. They're coming in to they're going for game spots. I think Nate is just coming there to get more experience, and I think Dom is going to try to keep him level-headed and be like, hey, we're getting experience. You're against the big boys now. Let's just do our thing.
Yeah, all super talented in their own regard. I would probably go with Dre of these 3, and then Seth, and then Nate as well in terms of order of finish. But ultimately, I don't think any of them is going to have enough to make the CrossFit Games. remains to be seen. Two other guys that I just want to throw out that were 15th and 16th respectively at the East semifinal last year that we still haven't talked about. Reminder, they took 12 guys last year.
Mm-hmm.
So these guys were 3 and 4 spots out. Evan Rogers and Garrett Clark. Evan Rogers, prior to that, had been 10th place at Syndicate. Garrett Clark has been competing in the regional since 2017. He's been moving in the right direction, 29th, 15th, 16th the last 3 years, and he did qualify for Rogue in the offseason. Didn't do that great there. Evan Rogers competed at Wadapalooza. He did not do great there, taking 27th, and then followed that up by competing at Fittest of the Coast the following weekend. So we've seen both these guys in the offseason a little bit. Do you think either of them can replicate that middle teen performance against this field this year, or maybe even do a little better?
Maybe Garrett. Evan, I'm not too familiar with, like, outside of Wadapalooza. But Garrett, what I really liked, he did not have a really good finish at Rogue, but what I liked about him at Rogue was he tore his hands really, really bad on that second workout with the logs, and that was bothering him the whole. Would he have done better? I think he would have did better, not like 5 spots better. I think I believe he finished last at Rogue. I don't think
19th. Yona with
last. Yeah, Yona had to withdraw. I don't think he would have finished last. I think he might have finished maybe 17th. But I mean, when you tear your hands as bad as he did, I mean, it looked like 3rd-degree burns on his hands. It affected everything the rest of the weekend. I mean, you think about all the grip. I mean, from the deadlift to, even handstand walking. He has a lot of potential. Again, he's another guy that I would like to see more season competitions. Maybe he has, and I'm just not seeing him, but not like the mid-tier. He's doing local comps. But for him to show up, after not seeing him at Rogue, I mean, he didn't compete at Wadapalooza. I think he has more upside. He also has a talent to make the Rogue field. It says a lot. I mean, he was basically in the same position that Jack Farlow was last year or the previous year. I mean, Jack obviously has a lot more potential, former teen athlete, blah, blah, blah. But you see how far Jack progressed. I think Garrett, he's nothing like Jack in terms of like abilities. Not yet, but I think he has the most upside. And I think where you have him at 29th here, I think that's probably where it finished, but I can also see him finishing as high as maybe 27 is kind of a push. I think he'll be in there with the Cam Cross, Peter Masons, which isn't a bad place to be. Again, that field is so deep that when you're talking about someone like Cam Crockett, Peter Mason, Marcon Jones, Will Carter, all finishing it, between 20 and 30. I mean, you got Ben Smith at 31. I mean, that's a ridiculous field.
Yeah. Last 2 guys I want to bring up. Lynn mentions one of them here, Jake Berman, and then Marquand Jones, who both these guys have been competing for a long time. Jake Berman, I think, first showed up at the regionals in 2016. Marquand Jones, first regionals was 2014. Jones has been pretty solid the last 3 years, 13th, and 20th at semifinals.
Yeah.
Jake Berman is also not someone to be ignored. I mentioned that he's been close before. He took 3rd in the LCQ one year, and he was 23rd last year at semis. Either of these guys have a chance, and who do you like better?
Have a chance. They have a chance to finish in the, maybe in the top 20. But I think where they're at right now is fine. I think the person you need to watch, that's great, by the way, Lynn pointing out event 3. I think the person you need to watch is Marquand on the snatch ladder. That's the guy I think you need to watch. He's going to put on a show, especially more likely he's probably going to be in heat 2 or 3, maybe heat 3. And he's going to put on a show in terms of just getting everyone pumped up for that finale. And but yeah, keep it on 265. He did really well last year based off of that snatch, the 1 rep max snatch off the run. He put up, I think at the time he had the top lift. And I think obviously he was passed up on the later heat, but he easily, if he would have had more time, I think he would have put more weight on. And I think Marquand, he switched camps. I think is he proven this year, or
I don't know.
I believe he's a proven athlete for this year. I'm not sure, but I can effort that. But anyways, but that's who I'm looking at in terms of that group right there.
Well, we spent a lot of time talking about the men in this field because I think that, quite frankly, they deserve it. These are, to me, is the strongest group of athletes. Like I said, top to bottom. I think we covered close to 30 of them there. So hopefully that gives you guys a good insight into each of them a little bit individually, and also the totality of the talent that's competing here. Undoubtedly, you're going to look at the leaderboard at the end of the weekend, and you're going to see people in 12th through 25th, and you're going to say, wow, I'm pretty surprised how good this group of guys is. Overall, I just want to remind people, don't get too caught up in the results early in the weekend. We saw people after 2 events that were celebrating Colton Mertens as being the top of the leaderboard. No one's ever forgotten about Colton Mertens, but it's a 6-event competition. No one's ever forgotten about, well, maybe people have forgot about Will Supanex, but he was in first place also after 2 events. If we won both of them, didn't make it. It's a long competition. Colton put up a great post yesterday. You guys can read that. It's gotten a lot of love. I think he might be the most popular guy in CrossFit currently, a male athlete. And for good reason. You know, he's an inspirational man on and off the competition floor. He mentions that he's been dealing with some stuff in his life this year. So obviously we wish the best for Colton in whatever he pursues, and I have no doubt that we'll see him back again. But the competition is designed to be this way. There's 1 workout, 2 workout, and then 3 workouts. I'll remind you guys, if you just came, keep an eye on Saturday. If there's an athlete that does not finish inside the top half of the field on both of those workouts, so far in Europe and North America West, they have not made the CrossFit Games. So even though there's still half the competition to go, it's a key thing to kind of look at. And I was looking at that and thinking about Colton on Saturday night, Sunday morning, and I was like, man, you know, he had this finish 24th or something like that on the legless workout, and let's see if he bucks that trend.
Yeah, Saturday has turned into moving day. We were thinking, hey, you know, is it really a moving day on Saturday because you only have 2 workouts in the other half? And it has shown that it has been.
All right, so North America East. Good luck with your picks. It's a tough one. It's definitely going to be a great competition, though. And I know that that's what most of you guys came here for. We're going to finish out by talking about the Africa region. They do get 1 spot to the CrossFit Games. I think it's going to be competitive amongst some of them at the top. Prior to the start of semis, I had picked Gilmarie Reineke to be the top finisher there. I've since dropped her down to my second pick. I have Gemma Rader making it as the top pick and the Heat 1. Gilmarie's finishing second. Christina Livadakis third. Regan Finkel and Tanya Boof are my top 5 in Africa. We tried to invite someone from the Africa region to be a part of the show and to give us some more insights like Sergio did. Did not get a response on that.
Yeah, she responded to me. She never got your text.
She never got it? Okay.
That's what she said. I'm like, did you hear from Brian? She goes, no, I never heard from him. So maybe you got an old number. I don't know.
Anyway, there's, you know, the last qualifiers we've had from here were Michelle Basnet and Michelle Morand. Neither one of them is in the field this year, so we're going to get some new blood in terms of the women's field. The person who's 6th there, Emma Holiday, did very well in the qualifier, but I don't really know too much about her, so we have her just on the outside of the top 5. The other 5 women we've seen compete. Several of them seem to be moving in the right direction. I think it's going to be kind of a wide open field, but right now I'm going with Gemma Rader. Any thoughts?
I like that pick. I mean, she trained out CrossFit Yaz. She's out in the UAE, so we know that her training partners, you know, it's a high level training environment there at CrossFit Yaz. So I like that pick. I like Christina. Obviously, she trains out in Australia. I mean, you'll see there's a lot of athletes here that are, you know, that they train outside the region. You'll see a couple of the favorites on the men's side do the same thing. But I like Christina. She does a lot of competitions in Australia, whether it be down under or some of those local comps there. She's there and she holds her own. I did like your pick with Gilmarie, just because she's another one. She finished 3rd at Elfit last year. She does a lot of local competitions. You know, she's been getting some international experience, not just there, but also in Europe as well. I don't think that's a bad pick. I think especially out of workout one. I think she'll be one of the better runners out of that group. But I also like Reagan Finkel. I mean, her and her sister Brady, and there's a third Finkel. You know, they finally made it to the games. They're former Invictus like athletes now. They kind of moved on their own. They're young. I believe Reagan's 21 and Brady's 23. But Reagan, the girls have been doing this CrossFit for a while, since they were teenagers, and you know they made it. Two of the girls, I think Reagan and they're on that team last year that made it to the games after a backfill spot, and so they finally got to put that marked off the bucket list. But I think Reagan is young, probably has a lot of potential, but those are the names I'm looking at on the women's side.
As far as the men goes, I've done a little bit more investigating into some of these guys. I had Ruan Duvenage picked as the top guy. I actually think Ruan Poitgier is a better pick of a Ruan this time around.
I wish you would have told me. Because when I originally made this graphic, I had the Ruan Duvenage name, but I had Poitgier's picture there, and I changed it right before the show. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not the right guy. I put the wrong Ruan, but maybe I should have just kept it. I'm like, yeah, it's both. But yeah,
I think they'll both be in the mix. The thing is, I think that the two fittest guys in Africa are probably Keelan Henry and Callum Diebel, but they're both on the smaller side, whereas Duvenage and Poitgier are some bigger guys. And we've seen already the kind of tendencies that we've talked about with the bigger guys having that push on the final day. We know Keelan Henry's a guy we've talked about over and over again when it comes to this region. We were bummed not to see him compete healthy the one time he made the games. Last year, he had to withdraw before the final event, but he was kind of out of the equation already. And clearly they didn't have a representative at the games last year. So I think it's going to be quite a battle. I would say everyone on this list, plus Michael Van Tonder, who I didn't know, but I did some research on preparing for this show, are going to be like 6 and up, plus Van Tonder are all guys that have potential to take that spot. So I think it's pretty wide open in Africa. There's always the potential that someone just runs away with it, but don't see these athletes compete anywhere else really all year round. So it's pretty difficult to evaluate them on a global field level. And if you're just looking at last year alone, Gilmarie was the closest on the women's side, and Poitgetter was the closest on the men's side. So I don't know if I had my picks right now are Gemma Rader and Ruan Poitgetter. I apologize for pronunciation there. But I think it's pretty wide open.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a runaway on either one of the side, because I mean, you kind of brought up if these workouts favor a bigger athlete, then you have both the Ruans, who are both bigger guys, stronger athletes, and then you have some other guys. I mean, South Africa, there's some big boys there. There really are. I mean, me doing some research there, I mean, there's guys who just all they do is like just weight lift, and they just happen to be a little bit fitness. But if it comes down to a true fitness test, then I think it's going to be between Callum Zernamer and Keelan. Final event, I think his ring muscle ups are probably the best in the field. But then fitness, if he's completely healthy, is Keelan. So I think it's going to be pretty wide open. I don't think anyone's going to run away with it, especially on the men and especially on the women's side as well. So this is another broadcast. It's going to be live on their YouTube all 3 days. You can watch event 1 on unlike the big 3, so you'll be able to watch that. I don't know who's doing the broadcast. I know Marius, our very own Marius, will be there, and I think they also have another great content creator, Theo, who shoots for the Dogs team. He's actually flying over to South Africa to shoot and provide content down there too. So there's going to be plenty of stuff. I know a lot of people probably don't know, but I'm going to watch some of this, especially the final day. I mean, especially the snatch ladder. I'm really interested to see what someone like Poitgier and Duvenage does on that, and even Diebel. I think Diebel's going to surprise people on that snatch ladder as well. And on the women's side, I think Lividatakis. Yeah, Lividatakis. Yeah, I think she'll be the favorite on the women's side. I'm pretty sure there'll probably be someone in the earlier heats that'll probably crush it. Yeah. But that's kind of Africa in a nutshell.
Okay, well, we went over 2 hours today. I think it was worth it. If you missed the start of the show and you're interested in the South American semifinal, Sergio Sanchez came on and joined us and gave us some great insights about the athletes down there.
Thanks, Sergio.
That are likely to do well. Most of the show spent on the East, which is appropriate as I think it's a super strong division. We did not cover the team competition here, but we will be covering the team competitions on Friday and Saturday from Knoxville. Been really trying to make an effort to give you guys some insights into not just who those teams are, but who the teammates are. So I appreciate those of you who recognize how hard they work to be there and that they all represent communities that care immensely about how they do as well. I'll be driving over to Knoxville tomorrow. PC's driving, I think, splitting the drive tonight and tomorrow. So we'll see you guys from Knoxville. We'll have very similar coverage to what we had in West Coast, but Chad Mueller is going to be joining us. So the team will grow a little bit, and we have some other stuff in store as well, probably for after the competition that we'll be releasing. Appreciate the support as always. Thank you to HGR. Thank you for those who wishing me to feel a little better. Just congested. I feel fine. But apologize for that.
It was that damn Uber. That damn Uber. Ever since you got that Uber.
Yeah, I took an Uber back from the venue. I just started sneezing and been blowing my nose ever since. So it happens when you travel a lot, but still pushing through, still doing the work for you guys and on behalf of the athletes. So looking forward to Syndicate Crown. Wilson and the crew put on the best competitions around, are as good as anybody. And I hope that if you're on site that you guys can say hi. And if you're at home that you enjoy the broadcast. Should be Sean Woodland and Adrian Conway in the booth with Bella Martin down on the floor doing the sideline. So a strong crew out there. So hopefully the coverage at home will be, reflective of that.
Well, I did talk to Adrian. He says hopefully they'll have them set up so that way you can see the weights for the team division. And so, yeah, if you need to watch, day one will be covered by the CrossFit Podcast by Adrian and various guests. We don't know who those guests are yet, but
Maybe I'll get invited back.
Maybe. I think Lauren will probably end up. I think she's going to be there for Talking Elite Fitness, so I wouldn't be surprised if she's on there as well. So, getting reps.
Either way, appreciate you guys. We will see you from Knoxville, and as always, Patrick,
be friendly, our friends.